Hi there, Love Monanjaya here, and welcome to the Path to C# Mastery, Lesson 2. In this video, we are looking at variables. A variable is simply a named storage location that holds data in memory while the program is running. It can also be viewed as a container for data. In C#, each variable has a specific data type. A data type is simply the type of data that a variable can store. It also determines what type of operations can be performed on the values stored in a given variable. Let's look at examples of data types in C#. The first one is integer keyword int. Integer data type allows whole numbers ranging from -2,147,483,648 to 2,147,483,647. It does not allow values with decimal points or fractions. Next, we have the long integer, which allows a range of -9 quintillion, 223 quadrillion, 372 trillion, 36 billion, 854 million, 775,808 to 9 quintillion, 223 quadrillion, 372 trillion, 36 billion, 854 million, 775,807. It's long indeed. Next, we have the byte. The byte stores numeric values ranging from 0 up to 250. Then we have the float. Float allows for decimal points, and the range is -3.4 times 10 to the power 38 to 3.4 times 10 to the power 38. 3.4 times 10 to the power 38 simply means 34 followed by 37 zeros. Huge number. Next, we have double, which allows storage of numeric values, including values with decimal points. It is a lot bigger than float, and it has a precision of 15 to 16 digits after the decimal point. Float has precision of 7 to 9 digits after the decimal point. Next, we have decimal. Decimal is smaller than int, but has a higher precision than float. The precision for decimal is 28 to 29 digits after the decimal point. Next, we have character. Character stores a single value, e.g. a letter or a special character. Then we have Boolean. Boolean holds the value true or false. Finally, we have string, which holds text. Now let's look at the rules for naming variables. Number 1, a variable name can only contain numbers, letters, and underscore. No other special characters, just numbers, letters, and the underscore. Number 2, a variable name cannot be a reserved word or keyword. A reserved word is a word with special meaning in C#. For example, words like if, int, etc. So you cannot use a reserved word as a name for a variable. Number 3, first character cannot be a number. Number 4, as a standard, the first letter must be in lowercase. Now let's do some coding. So I start my Visual Studio 2019. We say create a new project. ensure that C# is selected. Then here we have Windows and select console. This will be a console application. So we pick that. Then we say next. We are going to name our program variablesDemo. Then we select the folder in which to save our project. So after we've done that, we say create, and we are ready to go. The first data type that we are going to create is of integer data type. To do that, we type the word int and space, and then the name of our variable. We call it num1. So we have created a variable called num1. You can also assign a value at creation. Let's give it a value 0. So this statement simply means we are assigning 0 to num1. It does not mean num1 is equivalent to 0 or equal to 0. This statement assigns 0 to num1. So num1 now contains 0. So we have assigned a value to integer variable num1 at creation. This is also called initialization. We have given it an initial value. Let's view the contents of our variable. So we say console.writeLine num1, and we terminate our statement with a semicolon. So we run it, say debug, start without debugging, and we have our 0 there. So press enter. So our variable num1 currently contains the value 0. So let's assign a different number now. Let's give it 20. Okay, here let me just add this statement, console.read. Console.readLine. Yeah, use that. We've assigned the value 20 to num1. So this 20 is going to overwrite the 0 that was initially there. So let's run it and see. Oh, there's an error somewhere. We did not terminate that statement with a semicolon. Okay, let's run it now. Okay, so we have 20. Our variable num1 now contains the value 20. What would happen if we tried to assign a number with a decimal point to num1? We'll have that red squiggly line, and if we place our cursor there, it's telling us cannot implicitly convert type double to int. Remember, integer only allows whole numbers, and so this is an error that can't be allowed to be stored in there. Now let's create a variable of type float. So we type the word float in space, then the variable name, we call it num2. Okay, let's initialize it with a value, let's say 3.5. And when assigning a value to a float variable, you have to add an f at the end to signify that the figure you are assigning is a float value. So what would happen if we removed that? We have that red line again, and it reads, literal of type double cannot be implicitly converted to type float. So this is not allowed. We put back our f. So now we have our float variable called num2. So let's also display the amount contained in our float. So here we change that to num2. Okay, so num1, which is an integer, has 20. Num2, the float, has 3.5. Let's try a double. Simply say double num3 equal to 4.5. Doubles and floats can also accept values that do not have decimal places. So this can be 40 and we'll have no problem at all. So we say, let's make it 40.5. Okay, so we have that. And now let's create a string variable called name. Semicolon. And let's assign a name or a value. We have John there. Let's display what we have in the name variable. So we have our name there, John. Let's try a variable of character data type. Simply say car or char space. And then we just create letter. Let's assign something to this. When assigning a value to a character variable, we use single quotes. Add a D there. If we tried to use double quotes, we'll have that squiggly line. So now let's display the contents of our latest variable. Say debug, and there's our letter D. Now let's do what is known as typecasting. Typecasting is simply placing a value of a certain type into a variable of a different data type. For example, if we tried to assign the float num2 to num1, which is an int, say num1 equals to num2. What we are saying here is that the value of num2 should now go into num1 and replace whatever was currently in num1. And you can see we have the red squiggly line there, and there is a message there, cannot implicitly convert type float to int. So we cannot place an int value or a float value into an int. So in order to do this, we need to use what is called typecasting. So in order for us to place the value of num2, which is float, into a variable of int data type, we do this in brackets. We say int, yes, so like that. Int, open bracket, no, open parenthesis, int, then close parenthesis, and then the value that we want to cast into that variable. So it has now accepted. So num1, which initially had 20, will now have 3. Okay, because it's an integer, so everything after the decimal point will be lost. Num1 initially had the value of 20, so it's now going to have the value of 3 because an integer does not allow decimal points. So everything after the decimal point is going to be lost. Let's run. Our num1 now has 3 instead of 20. If we comment this out, it means this assignment won't happen. So we'll have our 20 in there. Like that. So we have 20 there. That's num1 contains the value of 20. Okay, so let our statement here take effect. So that's how we do typecasting. Let's also cast 4.5 into float. Let's try to assign the value of num3 into num2. We know that num2 is of float data type, and num3 is double. And we have a red squiggly line. It says, cannot implicitly convert type double to float. Okay, so what do? We use the same method. We say float num3. So what we are saying is convert num3 to float and then place it into num2. So our red squiggly line has disappeared. So our num2 is the second. So our num2 now is going to have 40.5 instead of 3.5. Let's run it and see. So we have 40.5. We have placed the value of num3 into num2. And that was made possible through typecasting. So this is what is known as typecasting. It allows us to place a value of a certain type into a variable of a different data type. Now let's do some arithmetic to avoid confusion. Let me remove these. First, let's display the value of num2. and the value of num3. Also dot write line num3. And then we do the addition. Okay, so let's run it. So num2 contains 40.5 and num3 contains 40.5, and the answer is 81. Okay, so this expression here was printed out as 81. Num2 and num3 have the same value because of this statement. We placed 43.5 into num2, so num2 also ended up having 43.5. But when doing your arithmetic, just see to it that the receiving, if you are going to place the answer into a variable, let's say if we say int answer, delete that. We say answer is equal to num1 plus num2. This won't work because num2 is, let's see, num2 is float and num1 is int. And so we cannot have a float go into this answer variable, which is of int data type. So if we change this to float, then our addition will work. So here we can say console dot write line answer. We run it. Answer now contains 43.5. Why 43.5? Because we had assigned the value of num2, which was 3.5, to num1, and we did some typecasting. Since num1 is int, so the 0.5 dropped off. So num1 currently has 3, and then to that 3 we add 40.5, and that's how we ended up with 43.5. That. So that's how we do some simple arithmetic. You can assign the answer of an arithmetic expression to a variable. Or you can also display the answer directly using the console.write line. Okay, so we've done some simple arithmetic, just showing how variables work. Now allow me to introduce you to what is known as concatenation. So we change this name of the variable from name to fname, that's first name. Okay, so we have first name there. Then we'll create another variable of string type called last name. So here we assigned John to the first name variable. Let's assign another name there. Let's say Barnes. Okay. So let me remove this. So now I'll say console dot write line f name plus L name. Let's see what that gives us. It's given us the two names, John Barnes. Okay, so that's what concatenation means, putting two strings together. Now for this to look neater, we can introduce that, then another plus. So the plus operator adds numeric values and concatenates string values. So when you use it on string values, it concatenates. When you use it on numeric values, it adds. So now we've added a space, because the space is a string. It's basically a literal. So after adding that space, let's now run it. And that's better. John, then a space, then Barnes there. Okay. So that's concatenation. With this knowledge, we can now say console.write, write line, we can say num1, and we add an extra space there, and then plus num1. So let's run it and see what that will give us. So it tells us num1 contains 3. So what this statement does is it puts together in one line the literal, in these quotes, and the contents of the variable num1. So if you want, you can even add some single quotes there. And what we'll have is that those single quotes there, num1 contains 3. So this is what concatenation means, simply joining two strings together. Now let's create two extra variables of string type. We'll call this one str num1. We assign a value there, give it a 2. Call it str num2. assign the value 3. This is a variable of data type string, so whatever you assign to it must be within quotes. If we removed those quotes there, we'll get that red line. That's red squiggly line. So in assigning values to a string variable, always place that value in quotes, regardless of whether it's a number or a space. The quotes are mandatory. So let's do this. So if we tried to add now let's add the values of strnum1 and strnum2 and see what we get. Let me comment these out so that don't see them in the output. So let me comment these out first. Now we'll try to add those two new variables together. strnum1 and strnum2. Okay. So what we get is 23 instead of 5. Why? Because 2 and 3 are strings. And when you combine two strings, the result is concatenation and not addition. In order to get the sum 5, we would have to convert those two string variables into int. And this is how we do it. So we can say console dot write line we use the convert class and then to int 32, then in brackets we say strnum1 plus convert dot to int 32. Int 64 is long int 32 is the ordinary int, and then in brackets we place the name of the variable whose value we want to convert. So what this statement does is it converts strnum1 to int and also converts strnum2 to int and then does the addition. Okay, so we are going to see now the result. The first was concatenation. We had 23 and now we have 5. So that's how we convert a string number to an int number. But if you try to do this, when what is contained in the string variable is not numeric, you will get an error. For instance, if you said console.write line convert dot to int 32 fname. This will give us an exception error. You see that? This means trouble. Saying unhandled exception, system format exception, input string was not in a correct format. Because we are trying to convert John into int. That can't happen. This conversion can only work if what is contained in the string variable meets the conditions for an integer. For instance, 3 is an integer, 2 is an integer. For example, if we said 2.3 and 3.5, this will give us an error because 2.3 and 3.3 are not integers. So let's do this. Again, here we go, that format issue, format exception error. Unhandled exception, system.format input string was not in a correct format. So this can only work if we say convert to double. Then this also, okay, we remove that, including the dot. Then we say dot to double. Then this will work. Oh, we still have this attempt to convert name to that, so we remove this. So we run it. Now we have our 5.6 there. So if you try to convert this to int, it will not work because it has a decimal point. If for some reason you want to convert your integer to string, you can use the same convert class. You can say convert, you can say console.writeLine convert dot to string num1. We run it. So this is num1. We still have our 3 there, but this 3 is no longer an integer. The 3 you are seeing here has been converted to string. So if we try to do an addition, and we say convert to string num2, another parenthesis there. What this will give us is the concatenated result. 340.5. So that was 3 plus 40.5. Because we've converted them to string, it brings 340.5. So that's how these conversions work. You can also convert something and place it into a variable. So we'll say double. Let's call it double new dub. And here we can say new dub equals convert dot to double str num1 plus convert to double str num2. Also dot right line, we'll say new dub contains concatenate the value new dub. So new dub has the same 5.6 that we got there. Okay, so it says new dub contains 5.6. Here we did the addition directly using the right line method. Then here we first placed the result into the new dub variable and then displayed the new dub variable. Let's remove this part. If we do this, we'll have the value of str num1 in new dub. Okay, so it gives us the value of str num1, which is 2.3, but converted to double. That's how we work with variables in C#. And this brings us to the end of this lesson. See you next time.